Hi, and welcome to the Access Direct Opening Bell, your essential pre-market podcast. In just minutes, get key global updates, overnight trends, and market-moving factors that set the tone for the day. Whether you're a seasoned trader or just someone tracking the markets, this is your go-to briefing to stay ahead at all times. So let's dive straight in. Good morning on a Thursday, and we will start with US equities, which rose for a third day thanks to big tech. This was despite weakness in economic data. The Nasdaq 100 rose 0.3%, while the S&P 500 was flat. Tariff-related headlines haven't contributed to much downside volatility lately, and that's making more strategists to pivot to a bullish view on American equities. Meanwhile, ADP employment data showed that hiring fell to the slowest pace in 2 years, while a separate gauge of services activity contracted for the first time in almost a year. In other markets, the VIX dropped for the fifth session. The dollar index and the 10-year treasury yield fell. Gold held its recent gains on weak data, and oil finished under $63 a barrel on signs that Saudi Arabia is seeking another material production hike at next month's OPEC Plus meeting. At home, the rupee fell below 86 to an almost 2-week low as intervention from the central bank was seen missing. The currency finished the session at 85.90. Separately, data showed that India's services PMI rose to a 3-month high in May, driven by strong export growth. Speaking stocks in the Nifty rose around 78 points to end at 24,620. That sent the India VIX down nearly 5% to 15.7. The NSE 500 small cap and mid cap indices rose and did better than the Nifty. Breadth was positive, with over 60% of the NSE 500 member stocks gaining. All but one of the NSE sectors ended up, with metals and energy rising 0.6% and 0.5% respectively. Realty was the only loser as it slipped 0.7%. The best and worst performers on the Nifty were Eternal, which rose 3.4%, and Bajaj Finserv that fell 1.8%. Technically speaking, 24,462 remains intact for now, and that's keeping bulls in the game. Should it break, the bearish pattern will target key support near 23,800. Short-term resistance sits between 24,760 and 24,882. Like we said yesterday, the period between the 10th of June and the 13th of June is critical. Meanwhile, provisional data showed that foreigners invested around 1,080 crores yesterday. The total month-to-date outflow now stands at near 4,400 crores. On to derivatives, and the Nifty's put-call ratio rose to 0.73 from 0.65 earlier, while the Bank Nifty's fell to 0.81 from 0.87. Nifty calls were liquidated while puts were added, and implied volatility fell over 200 basis points at the close, which meant that on a net basis, market participants remained optimistic. Options concentration for today's expiry shows a trackable range of 24,600 to 25,000 for today, with the biggest change for both calls and puts pinned at the 24,600 strike. Note that we have ignored distance strikes that are far out of the money for the sake of this analysis. Demand for 1% out of the money calls fell more than that for similar distance puts, which means volatility traders turned cautious based on today's expiration. Speaking net index options activity, foreigners and proprietary traders were bullish, while retail investors turned bearish. Elsewhere, foreigners' net short positioning in index futures was flat at roughly 103,000 contracts. Looking forward to today's trading session, the GIFT Nifty was up 23 points at 7 a.m. Asian markets were a mixed bag. US index futures were flat. Speaking stocks, Maruti and Vedanta were at horizontal support, while Central Bank and Hindustan Copper were at horizontal resistance. Adani Power, Bata India and Chola Financial were at trendline support, while Ajanta Pharma and Balrampur Chini were at trendline resistance. Talking breadth, 78%, 81% and 50% of stocks in the NSE 500 were above their 50, 100 and 200-day averages. Initial jobless claims and trade balance data will release from the US later today. That is a wrap on the day's podcast. Please note that this podcast serves solely for informational purposes and should not be considered financial advice of any kind. For a comprehensive disclaimer, please visit our website. Thank you, and we will see you tomorrow at the same hour. Have a good day and take care.
Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.